Led by a management consultant, all 12 councillors and heads of various departments came up with ideas designed to set Newcastle on a course for the future.
It was all about where we'll be in 5 years' time. What is the plan of this city and where we're going, how we're going to get there and who's going to pay for it.
Deputy Mayor Frank Rigby says one important outcome was the decision to reorganise Council's 150 committees.
What we want to do is get that down. We'll have 5 committees. Any other committee that we've got of council at the moment, the good ones, will be subcommittees of those 5. The ones that don't work, we'll get rid of them, and we will review this every 12 months.
Other ideas discussed included ways of rescuing the CBD, promoting tourism and developing the city's parks. But some aldermen are concerned it could be a case of all talk and no action.
I do hold a deep concern that the good work that has been done and achieved has got to be come up with fruition and be implemented. And I think that's where the danger is going to be.
Everything is achievable. It is achievable, we can do it, and we can finance it if we do it right.
A report outlining the proposed plans discussed at the weekend is expected to be completed later this month. Melinda Smith, NBN News.
This is the microselectron machine. It controls brachytherapy, a form of cancer treatment which uses radioactive isotopes or needles that are surgically implanted in the cancerous tumour.
This is a very good type of technique because it treats the tumour and it spares all the normal tissue.
The major advantage of the microselectron is that once a patient is connected to the machine and a radiation dosage is programmed in, treatment can then be started and controlled from outside the room. Previously, medical staff were required to manually insert the needles and start or stop treatment while in the room. The treatment method used previously meant that when visitors or medical staff entered the room, they were exposed to some form of radiation. The benefits of this machine and the interruption button is that the radiation is effectively turned off before anyone enters the room.
In particular, the nursing procedures can take all the time which is required. In previous time, when the patients were actually radioactive, nursing procedures were kept to a minimum.
Dr. Kron says the machine designed in the Netherlands will be used in conjunction with other cancer treatments like chemotherapy and surgery. It's addition to the treatment process, helping the overall fight against cancer.
The trial before Mr Justice Newman continued with family and friends of the 6 people killed in the massacre and the only survivor, Christopher Gall, maintaining their vigil for the hearing. Proceedings only lasted half an hour today, with Defence Counsel Sean Flood tendering a Newcastle Herald interview with massacre hero John Thompson and applying for him to be recalled to give further evidence. 6 character references were also presented to the court by Baker's counsel. The statements describing him as a loving, caring gentleman who became deeply distressed by the breakup of his relationship with Kerry Gannon. Many thought he couldn't or wouldn't have done what he did on October 27 last year. Outside the court, Anne Gannon, mother of the 2 young women killed at Terrigal, spoke out, saying Kerry was forced to take out a domestic violence order against Baker.
It's been stated he hit Kerry. That's violence. He wanted to intimidate her, and he did. He intimidated Lisa. He stalked them.
The case resumes tomorrow with further psychiatric evidence on Malcolm Baker to be presented to the court.
Armidale and Numeric councillors and staff joined with the Department of Geography and Planning at the university to come up with the strategic development study.
It's really a choice between letting the place grow haphazardly and letting it grow according to some sensible plan which minimises the cost of development and provides the sort of environment that people want.
The study looks at projected demand for new urban land, what limits there would be on that development and what the options are.
The city at the moment is, of course, finalising its corporate plan for the next 10 or 15 years, and so we obviously need to know about infrastructure costs, where we've got to place them, roads, our water services, all those sort of things. And I think this type of planning exercise is absolutely essential.
And the public is not being left out of the equation, now being given 2 months to comment on the strategic plan.
Certainly the next stage is the public evaluation of what we have done, and we'll see what comes out of that.
Traffic was back to normal on Maitland Road, Tyers Hill today, following an accident involving this Mitsubishi Magna last night. Around 10:30, a 24-year-old Shortland man was driving his father's car around this curve when he lost control. The car mounted and travelled along this safety rail for about 6 metres. It then collided with a steel lighting pole, causing it to snap and fall across Maitland Road. The car then travelled a further 100 metres down the road, minus 3 tyres which had been ripped off by the safety fence. Paul Byrne was on the scene soon after.
I think he was fairly lucky. Normally they don't walk away from accidents like this on this corner.
The 24-year-old is due to appear in Newcastle local court later this month, charged with high-range drink driving. Catherine Lamond, NBN News. Around 9 a.m. this morning, 29-year-old Rose Borg was driving this Ford Telstar west along Loveday Road with her 3-year-old daughter Jessica on a booster seat in the back. Police believe the woman lost control, the car skidding across the road and into a tree. Passing motorists alerted police. What was the condition of the two when you arrived?
It was obvious the driver of the vehicle was deceased when police arrived. A small child in the back of the vehicle wasn't breathing and at that time didn't have a pulse either. Passerbys and myself revived the child or give the child CPR and mouth-to-mouth.
Jessica was then flown by the rescue helicopter to John Hunter Hospital in a critical condition. She died a few hours later. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Hunter Electricity at Patterson, north of Newcastle, is a family operation that's been putting in power services across the state for the last 12 years. But Managing Director Alan Dunlop says one outstanding debt is a huge burden for the company to carry.
The government basically is owing us about 1.6 million.
The problem stems back to June last year. A contract to build 4,500 kilometres of power lines from Broken Hill north to the Queensland border. It is a $15 million contract. Alan Dunlop says additional design work which has been completed has not been paid for, and he's been wrangling with Energy Minister West for months to get the money.
Contractually, the government is saying no, that's not within the contract, but we see it otherwise, and at this point in time we are working on a claim, another claim to put to the government in fairly black and white terms.
A spokesman for Mr West said all outstanding debts had been paid as due to contract. Meanwhile, work on the project has stopped. Alan Dunlop says if the matter isn't resolved soon, 100 jobs are on the line. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The 1989 earthquake caused extensive damage to the Royal Newcastle Hospital. After 2.5 years, approval has just been given by the Health Service Board to spend the insurance money rebuilding the site. Hospital boss Peter Gibson says the multi-million-dollar funding proposal shows a commitment not to close the hospital.
Well, the beauty of this decision is that it confirms once and for all that the Royal has a future here on this site, and it's going to be confirmed in bricks and mortar as well as just in talk.
Plans are underway to build a new roadway off King Street leading up to the Royal. There'll also be a new front entrance for the Nixon wing. The hospital will continue to specialise in bone and neurology problems. The urology wards on level 5 have already been updated, and orthopaedics on level 3 will be renovated. However, some of the surrounding buildings, including the nurses' home and Wheeler House, may be sold off.
Wheeler House and the North Wing are surplus to the needs of the Hunter Area Health Services. Their future is still not determined clearly, but it's expected that they will be probably sold off if the marketplace is interested in developing them.
Work is expected to begin this month. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Annette Hunter, Arthur Thompson, their baby Courtney and friend Stephen Burgess spent last night in this car near Pole Blue in the Barrington Tops. They became stuck in heavy snowfalls late yesterday as they headed towards Scone. Safe and warm this morning, Annette recalled the night. They had just one blanket, no food, and the temperature was below -7 degrees.
Scary. It's scary because we didn't know what was out there, kind of thing. We didn't know who was there and that. I was just hoping that someone come along and help us out.
The four were evacuated this morning after forestry officers on a routine inspection found Stephen walking for help.
Terrible. Snow up to my knees, freezing, didn't know where I was going to go, end up, or anything.
He was very, very cold and very pleased to see us when we come along.
Light snow continued to fall for most of the day, forcing the closure of the Gloucester to Scone Road. A number of campers are caught in the fall, but are determined to wait it out until the road is reopened. According to forestry officers, this is perhaps the heaviest snowfall on the tops in more than 15 years. In fact, in some places, the snow is more than ½ a metre deep. The snow will last for the weekend, but the Forestry Commission is urging four-wheel drive owners not to use the area.
Should they attempt to use those roads, it'll only create environmental damage and high maintenance costs for us at a future time.
Further north, a good covering of snow also fell at Hanging Rock south of Tamworth and in the Guyra and Ebor districts. While the cold could create problems for farmers, it provided a lot of fun for these children. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
The Minister for Conservation and Land Management, George Souris, got into the drink today, encouraging local high school students to care for our waterways. It's part of a statewide program called Streamwatch, with schools receiving special scientific kits to test the water for any impurities. At $3,000 each, and with operation costs of around $500, they are not cheap. The government sharing the bill with local companies. At Muswellbrook in the Hunter Valley, Muswellbrook and Scone High Schools joined up. The Hunter River is vital to the region, not just for drinking water, but also for the farming and mining industries. These young students will be making sure the river is kept alive for future generations.
It's the latest thing in magnets, but what exactly is neodymium?
It's an alloy of an element called neodymium, iron and boron. Those three mixed together in the right combination, made the right way under the right conditions, make a butte magnet.
Australian Magnet Technology is the country's only manufacturer of the new super magnets. Based at Raymond Terrace, AMT uses a special process that transforms the alloy into a product of incredible strength.
The alloy is ground down to rock size. From rock size it's milled to a fine powder, about 3 microns. The fine powder is placed in moulds.
When the moulds are pressed and baked, the finishing touches are applied.
Then they're either cut up or coated and then magnetised. So we have quite strong magnets.
But just how strong are they?
We have now lifting devices that we can show you that will lift anywhere between, say, 200 kilos to about 3 tonne.
Overseas, the magnet industry is worth nearly $3 billion, with applications in aerospace, automotive and medical fields. And while the Australian market is only small, it's attracting more and more business.
In speakers, I mean every telephone, for instance, right now I think has a neodymium magnet in it. Electric motors, small lifting devices, the list is really endless.
Some Australians are guilty of overlooking things cultural, but a dedicated group in Grafton believe Australian art is a treasure we should all support. Back in 1967, the art club was set up with a membership of just 10 people.
There were no people really interested in painting, maybe just individuals, but to make a club start and get a whole pile of people, as is now, totally involved in art, well, it's brought art to Grafton.
Many exhibitions later, the club now has 80 members. With the birthday celebrations, a display of prize-winning works through the years, many of which have been traced and borrowed from private collections. Also on show, paintings by 30 of the club's members, ranging from still life to portraits to landscapes. In these tough economic times, 25 years of business is something to be proud of.
A lot of clubs go down the drain, and this is one that's stayed alive for 25 years, so I think that's pretty good.
You'd think thinking is something we all do naturally every day, but for 20 teachers from Maxville, they're being taught to do it all over again. A 2-day course conducted by the Department of Education is helping them learn how to pass on advanced thinking skills to their students.
The program's designed to give students conscious thinking skills, in other words, tools that they can use in the future in their practical everyday life as well as their academic life at school.
Maxville High is the second school on the North Coast to hold such a course. It encourages students to think for themselves. The course will be offered to Year 7 students next year as part of the school curriculum.
And teachers are very aware that they need to update their skills and keep in line with what their students need for the future.
The Novas in the green were doing pretty well in the competition until last night. The losses cost them a position in the top 4. The Novas had to fight for every point and every chance of possession. They kept in touch through the first half with some crafty intercepts. But Bayside were more determined under the basket, snatching rebounds and making the most of their scoring chances. The Newcastle girls realised pretty physical play if they were to have a chance. Chris Walmsley kept the pressure up in defence and walked away with a fat lip for her trouble, thanks to an accidental head clash. Bayside drew too many free shots and finished with a handy lead.
Selling your car in a public place may end up costing you up to $100. Vehicles which are sold on council land, reserves and footpaths will now attract fines. The reason? The authorities say the for sale signs are a distraction to passing motorists.
The basic problem is that motorists' vision is distracted by these vehicles being for sale in locations where those vehicles should not normally be put.
The police believe the scheme may also reduce the number of vehicles and car parts that are stolen and resold. Car owners will be expected to remove their vehicles during the next couple of weeks.
We will warn the people over the next 3 weeks that what they're doing is illegal, and we would ask them to move on the vehicles straight away.
After that, though, owners will be fined. These rules don't apply to people selling their cars from private residences.
Cut from a long way back and very wide on the track as Red Javelin starting to wind up. 200 metres left to go. Mr. Elegant is tackling direct path and joining in down the outside is Hula Warrior with a great run. Hula Warrior hit the front with 100 metres left to go and Hula Warrior will win it. Hula Warrior's won from Wag. Mr. Elegant, I think.
And Harley came through again, this time with a first placing. The Quinella $37.50, the trifecta nearly $1,500.
The Hunter Public Health Unit receives around 150 complaints a year from people finding foreign matter in foods, these ranging from mice in buns to gun pellets in meat. The latest report involved this chocolate bar and was made by a Lake Macquarie woman who wishes to remain anonymous.
She was eating some chocolate and found half a pin, what looks like half a pin, in the chocolate.
Dr Stevenson says the needle may have entered the chocolate a number of ways.
Can be introduced during the manufacturing process. The other possibility is that it was introduced being a pin. It could have been introduced through a packet, for example, in a shop.
The Hunter Health Unit Senior Food Inspector, who is analysing the chocolate, believes it was manufactured outside New South Wales, so the discovery will be referred to an interstate health unit which will investigate the company's manufacturing process and possible faults. Dr Stevenson says the problem could involve the company's metal detectors.
Could be that the piece of metal was so small that it may not have been detected, but our food people here are of the opinion that it should have been detected at the point of manufacture if it was present there.
Dr Stevenson stresses such findings in foods are not common occurrences, but when reported are treated very seriously, especially if sabotage is suspected.
Food is one of those vulnerable items, I think, where you can get this happening.
Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Brad Goddard knew the kick was coming, but the ball appeared to have a mind of its own. Des Hasler awarded the try even though he was offside. But a few minutes later, as luck would have it, a bouncing ball this time helped the Knights. Mark Sargent kept the momentum rolling. Manly started to look desperate. This trip on Brad Godden, though, going unnoticed. In the second half, Matthew Rodwell pulled off a trick that would sit well in any juggler's repertoire. With 5 minutes to go, Adrian Brunker grabbed a great try after backing up, but the pressure to level the scores took its toll. With the crowd breathing a collective groan, there wasn't a crack big enough to swallow him up. The front-on tackling style that has become a Knights trademark could soon come in for special attention from the league. In the past 2 games, 4 opposition players have been carried off with serious knee injuries. League executive Mick Stone said technically the tackles are not illegal, but they will investigate if complaints are made. Tim Madison and Matthew Johns were mentioned in the referee's report over a spear tackle, but late this afternoon had not been cited. The Knights reserve grade again had the crowd on their feet. With seconds to go, Andrew Johns scored one of the most deserved wins of the year. The reserves are equal first on the ladder and looking good for a grand final berth. Darren Curtis, NBN News.
Trying to contend with Sydney's inevitable urban sprawl, state planners are looking for escape valves. Sydney's outer suburbs are expected to swell with another 1 million people over the next 20 years. Service connection charges could rise to $40,000 each to persuade prospective homeowners to look elsewhere.
We don't want to see a sprawl between here and Sydney. We don't want to see traffic snarls as you have in Sydney.
That's where Newcastle and the Hunter come in. Local politicians and planners are wary of people dumping in this area without consideration for infrastructure, jobs and the social consequences of a large population influx. The quality of life in the Hunter, its rail and road links to Sydney and its potential to absorb a greater population make this area more attractive to state planners than the Illawarra, south of Sydney, which is already considered to be at full capacity.
Certainly if there's no jobs package associated with this present plan, then we'd just be a dormitory suburb for Sydney, and that's not good enough. If the plan means that we're looking at developing population here in Newcastle along with the development of jobs, then it could have very positive benefits for the Hunter.
From the information that we're aware of, which is pretty much leaked, government.
Wipe on tan has been used by bodybuilders for years, the darker colour helping to enhance their muscle definition, but Swansea's Darryl Toff shocked everyone walking on stage without any. The pale skin stunned judges, but apparently didn't detract from his efforts. He still managed a second place. Port Kembla's Eloy Avala looked to be enjoying himself, his enthusiasm grabbing him a second as well for his division. These bodybuilders will all line up again in October for the state titles in Sydney, trying to win their way back to Newcastle for the Nationals in late October.
There are around 5,000 chemical fires in the state each year, fire officers putting personal safety on the line. In April 1990, a chemical fire ran out of control at St Peter's in Sydney, the fire brigade confronting a blaze they knew little about, unaware of exactly which chemicals were fueling the flames.
They were getting nasty surprises. Basically, they did not have the information on the chemicals, and they were getting nasty surprises. They were flying blind.
But a new computer system launched today gives fire officers important details on how to fight a chemical inferno. It's called the Stored Chemicals Information Database, or SCID. It offers programmed information like which type of chemicals are on the property, where they are stored, a sketch of the plant and emergency contacts. All this at their fingertips.
So obviously this information is really vital to the way in which they fight fires.
It'll make extremely beneficial for the fire service, so knowing that we've got access to it prior to arriving at the incident.
Businesses that store chemicals must register for SCID under compulsory licensing laws. Already 17,000 companies or businesses are listed on the program. That number is expected to increase to around 30,000 across New South Wales. Businesses that don't register before the end of the month can be fined. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
It's been a long time in coming, but the region now has its first kangaroo pies. They're baked here at Craig's Bakery in Lake Macquarie Fair.
I'd seen on the news and that about the release of the meat just recently for consumption, and I thought to myself, what a great idea. What more tradition than a great Aussie kangaroo meat pie?
The meat is shipped in from Sydney, and according to authorities, it's low in fat and cholesterol, and there's plenty of it. But some people have been slow to take to the idea of eating our national symbol and cousin of Skippy. We decided to test a few shoppers at Lake Macquarie Fair.
It's good. I like it, yeah. That's nice.
Lovely.
It's all right?
Yeah, very nice.
And what you didn't want to try kangaroo before today?
I've often said I would if it ever come around, like, you know, because I tried frog's legs and all the rest of them. No, very nice.
Well, I guess all that remains now is for me to give it a try, so here goes. What's that, Skip? What? Sonny's in trouble?
There are about 8,000 government cleaners across the state, and rallies like this one have been sending a clear message to the Premier.
Mr Fay, Mrs Cohen, government cleaners are not for sale.
The government's plans to sell its cleaning contracts to private companies to save $32 million have enraged cleaners who say they've made enormous productivity increases.
We have become more cost effective, more efficient, and I think we're entitled to have the chance to prove that we can make a bigger impact on the cleaning service.
Some $130 million have been saved in the last 2 years, and they were done by way of an agreement with the government on the premise that there would be job security for the cleaning staff.
While the government has guaranteed cleaners 12 months' work, the union is sceptical.
They know they're not going to have a job. And they're not even going to have that for 12 months because they're just simply going to push these people so hard and say, well, you're not suitable.
We've worked our little butts off doing everything they've asked of us. We've complied with every request they've ever made for us. And what do they want to do? Just sell us off like a herd of sheep.
And job losses aren't the cleaners' only concern.
Jan here has worked for 18 years and now she's only got 18 months to go to her superannuation entitlement. Well, she's not going to get all of her benefits.
So how much money would you stand to lose?
I've been told $20,000. We're out the gate at Christmas time with nothing after 20 years service. We don't even get recognition that we worked for them for 20 years and we got nothing.
The cleaners will take their concerns to the steps of State Parliament on September the 7th.